Welcome back, everybody, to the Racer on Demand show. I am Megan with my co-host Amanda, and we've got a special guest on today. So this is actually our first guest for the podcast. And so we have Dave here, who is a good friend of both of ours, and he works at Radius, which is also the company that does Gunk. And so I'm representing today. But yeah, we've actually been partnered with Gunk for about 20 years, which is really cool. But Dave is new to the scene. So welcome, Dave. To kick off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your professional experience as it relates to motorsports?
Okay, well, obviously I'm Dave, as Megan said. I've been in the automotive industry for roughly 14 years now. I kind of started in the aftermarket performance parts industry and moved into tires, and then from tires into chemicals, which is where I'm at now. This is a passion project for me. I'm an automotive enthusiast myself, just kind of from a background, just self-taught, build cars, like cars, do things with cars, hang out with car friends. So this has always kind of been, you know, an area that I've really wanted to be in as an adult, like for my career. And so I just kind of made it happen. And I often people will ask me how I got here, and I tell them I have no idea. So here I am doing my best to kind of fulfill, the lifestyle and career choice that I would like. So that's why I'm here.
Love it. And, I don't have much experience with you in the blaster space. That's pretty relatively new, but I know you from Nexen. You were our Nexen contact for a long time, and we worked close with you in the motorsports marketing side of the world. So that's how I know Dave. And it was just really cool to see Megan and I come together. And it's like, oh, our first guest is definitely going to be Dave because we both know him from these two different places.
I'm super grateful for the opportunity to kind of do both, like to do everything that I've been able to do within this space. And like, it is such a small world. And it is really funny how like close niche, like everybody knows everybody. And so it is funny that we kind of, we worked previously when I was at Nexen, and now I'm kind of in the gunk blaster space and working with Megan, and how it's kind of all tied together and everything else. So it's pretty, I like that. It's cool. It's a cool industry to work for, and it kind of helps build long standing relationships.
When I worked at US Auto Force, I was out to dinner with some of our sales leaders, and we were talking about how funny it was that I knew people from motorsports that they knew from working, with distributors and whatnot. And the word that was used was incestuous. The automotive space is incestuous and just recycles people. With the two companies that we know you from, they're really two radically different worlds. You're looking at a major performance component like a Nexen tire versus a behind the scenes chemical like the blaster or gunk products. So for our listeners who oftentimes only see those logos, can you explain what that shift from Nexen to blaster looked like for your job?
Okay. So coming from Nexen to Blaster is it's a drastically different space. The companies are ran differently. The organizations are treated differently. The employees and like the type of employees are very different. But from that perspective, I think, getting down into the nitty gritty when it comes to like sponsorship for a company like Nexen or like a tire company or something like that, it was pretty prevalent like what their main focus was, right? And for most businesses, you kind of know how it goes, right? They want the most bang for their buck, just like everyone else. The programs for motorsports for Blaster and Gonk compared to Nexen are similar but also very different. And so from a budgeting perspective, like a lot of that funding is pretty relative. We were doing Formula Drift at Nexen, we were doing Champ Off Road, we were doing some Ultra 4 stuff. And so with Blaster and Gunk, it's a little bit different. Like it's a different space for me. It's kind of different how it operates. There's different costs, right? So with Megan, we're doing like the NHRA stuff and Randy Meyer Racing, of course. And then, we have our stuff with Matt Tift and the Mansfield Speedway project that's coming up and everything else that's going on. There's a lot more going on here than there was at Nexen. Nexen was pretty cut and dry when it came to like what their involvement was with certain things. Like, so it was like, obviously Nexen want to be involved in motorsports. They make a tire that's designed for that type of activity, right? Whether it's consumer or professional. But I would say overall, like the budgeting It's pretty similar. Everyone's deliverables are different. And so it's kind of catered to each partnership that we have. It really is. It's relative to so many different avenues, different aspects. It could be different drivers, different co-sponsors could play a part into like how that, how that budgeting works, what those deliverables look like, et cetera. So without going into specifics too much here, where the prioritization is from each company is different.
Mhm.
Our marketing budget in total could be massive, right? But only a select amount of that is going to go to motorsports. And that's how it was with Nexen. We probably spend more here, honestly, on motorsports. Realistically, it's more of a focus for Blaster and Gunk than it was for Nexen, which is surprising for that type of marketing, or at least like partnership marketing, driver race sponsorship. We're probably 30 to 40% higher at Blaster and Gunk than we were at Nexen, because it's a main priority for Blaster and Gunk, where it wasn't necessarily a main priority for Nexen.
So when we're talking about these spends and partnering with racers, many of our listeners don't really even know what that means, right? Like when you're giving somebody part of your marketing budget, which to your point is limited and it's allocated, what was Nexen ultimately looking for in a return for those sponsorship dollars? And how does that differ from what you're getting on the Blaster side or what you're seeking for the successful partnership with Blaster?
I have to like think about it logistically from like the Nexon's point of view, because like I said, it wasn't really necessarily their main focus. And I can give like the generic answer like, oh, brand exposure, oh, engagement, oh, more sales. Like obviously those are all things that people want from, external partnerships that you have with, whether it's racers, drivers, et cetera, whatever. But I hate to sound generic, but that's kind of the truth, is like, Nexon wasn't really specific on what they expected from the program when I was there, right? But they kind of left it up to me, because I had known the space prior. You bring social media into it, and like that plays a massive part into it, because if you're a driver nowadays and you don't have a social presence, it doesn't necessarily help you if you aren't able to like quantify your likeness or your reach or stuff like that. So a lot of what Nexon was looking for is partners that would cater to the tire, right? Partners that liked the tire, that had previous experience with the tire, that didn't talk bad about the tire, had good experiences with it, or stuff like that. And someone that's going to overall kind of help promote the brand. And when it comes to Blaster and Gunk, we kind of look for partners that like, hey, we want to use people that are already using the product. We want to partner with people that have been using it since they were building stuff with their grandpa in their garage, right? We've been around for a long time. It's a legacy product in some manner. We want to support the people that are using the product, that have experience with it, that are going to continue to use the product. And that kind of helps us because a lot of the work is already done. And then just kind of offering that little bit of extra support kind of within that space and saying, hey, we really like what you're doing with it. We see you're using the product. We want to bring you on as someone that's going to be a brand ambassador for us, or someone that's going to be a positive avenue for us on social media, or YouTube, or whatever space they may be in. Someone that's going to represent it positively. And between the two companies, I could say the goal is pretty much the same overall. But like I think there's a little bit more leniency here. We're kind of an evergreen product, right? People aren't just using Blaster or Gunk products on their cars or trucks or whatever, but they're using it on, their off-road equipment or their homes or their campers or RVs or stuff like that. So we can kind of be placed in a little bit of everything. And we have some new products actually coming out in a couple months that'll be diving into a little bit of a different space than automotive. Not something that's out of the ordinary for us, but I've been tasked with hey, see if you can find people that work within this space. And that's kind of new for me because I'm looking for people that are, not necessarily what I'm interested and or who I would typically work with. So it's kind of been a challenge, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's really the same overall. It's who's going to represent the brand well, who's going to talk positively about the brand, who's going to be honest about the brand and the performance of the brand, whether it's tires, chemicals, like what have you, right? Like brand partnerships are important because it also allows you to help with product development. There's definitely been times where you're in situations where, hey, maybe I don't like this product or maybe this isn't working as well. Okay, that's good feedback because I can bring that back to the team and we can kind of make adjustments on that. So when it comes to brand partnerships, you get a little bit more than just a influencer or just a, what have you. Because when you work well with those brands to establish a long-term connection, then you inevitably end up with someone that's going to help the business furthermore.
Yeah, well, that's like so we're coming off of PRI show, and I helped co-host the Sponsorship 101 session with Alex Streiler, and that's what a lot of the marketing managers that we had on the panel had said is they want someone that's used the product, that could give a testimonial, that could actually be able to tell their audience, "Hey, this is why I've used this," whether it has helped with performance, so like a tire, or kind of more non-endemic, I would say, kinda like with Gunk and Blaster. So let's pivot now to the tougher side of it, because we know that all partnerships and sponsorships don't go smoothly. So I'd like to know, have you ever had a partnership where the racer's action or their lack of action had really eroded your confidence in them?
I have like a very specific example of this that I could use, but I'm not going to name any names. And I think Amanda was probably there for this. In the motorsports world, you run into all different lifestyles of people, right? All different walks of life. And this wasn't necessarily the driver's fault. He was a young kid, right? He was kind of fresh into it, doing what he could. I think the thing that kind of ruined it for me specifically with this kid, it was the actions of his managers or his parents. I would say they were non-professional in my eyes. I was between a rock and a hard place, because if you're racing and you have sponsors like this, in my opinion, whether you're 19, 20, 25, 35, you should make an effort to manage yourself in some aspect, right? You can have your race manager or what have you, but like you should really put in the effort to like learn the space, learn to manage your own, learn to make decisions for yourself and kind of build the contracts for what you're looking for, and not allow other people, whether it be family members or what have you, to make those decisions or manage those partnerships for you. Because if you're the one that's delivering what we're asking you of, then I think that you should be the one that is deciding how that avenue is taken, what your thoughts and perspectives are on things, how you want to improve this partnership. Because a lot of people, they may have something in their best interest, but it may never get portrayed because it's getting pushed under the rug by somebody else. I can't say there was a bunch of times where it was unpleasant, but there was a couple of times where I was like, why are we working with you again? I'm very confused, but I digress, right?
That's never the receiving end you wanna be on as a racer.
No, and like I enjoy doing this. I enjoy being involved in this space. Like I love racing, I love motorsports, I love what have you, all of it. I want to be involved in all of it. So it makes it tough for me, because when I see value in someone and then someone else steps in and kind of like brings that value down, in my opinion, I'm kind of like, well, I don't want this to end up being a roadblock or a problem or something in the future that's going to be a bigger issue than it has to be. You have to be careful, and at the end of the day, you have to make sure that I don't take anything personally, because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm here to help you. You're here to help me. I pay you to help me. That's kind of how it goes. And that's, it's an agreed upon terms. It's business. I think people forget a lot of the time that it is business, right?
Mhm.
And regardless of your relationships with the people, like the people you work with and everything else, like at the end of the day, the goal is to achieve whatever the business has told you the goal is to achieve. And that's kind of where I come from that. So I've never really had any terrible interactions with anyone specifically, that I've worked with, but there's definitely been a couple times where I've like questioned, like why or what or who or, whatever. So
What about the flip side to that, versus having a racer that maybe didn't deliver or delivered a less than stellar experience or not building a direct relationship like you mentioned? What about the flip side? What about somebody who really nailed the assignment and, blew it out of the park? Tell me a little bit about what it looks like when somebody does really well.
this is really biased, Amanda. And you know this because you know where this is going.
I was hoping you'd have a different example, but
I don't. I mean, like Megan is obviously a good example, but that is also a biased example, right? So, like, I don't want to be super biased. both Megan and Chris. Chris was wonderful to work with at Nexen, went above and beyond, did so much. Like you and your whole family and everybody else was wonderful. And there was always Chris was always, hey, what can we do more? What can we do this? And it's been very similar with Megan and your family, Megan, as well with the NHRA stuff and the stuff that you have coming up for 2026. I would say realistically, Chris is probably my most pleasant experience from that perspective. And I wish I did have a different example because that kind of speaks volumes in itself. When I worked with all the guys at FD, all the drivers were pretty great. They were always pretty catered, like, hey, we'll do this and this and this, if you want us to do this. And it was always whether I was attending the events and going there to kind of like hang out and just kind of make my face known, or if it was just like a, hey, well, this event's coming, can you guys do this? It's always been pretty agreeable for the most part, right? As long as you have their backs and their support, because there was definitely times where I was put in a pinch at Nexen specifically, with deliverables on tires. There's a handful of times where I definitely put myself in a certain situation to make sure that I was executing what demands need to be met from our perspective, whether it's known or not by them. I did whatever I had to do to make things happen, which is never pleasant because realistically things should just be planned out and work the way they're planned out. But that's not how life works all the time. So you kind of have to pivot and make those decisions and kind of do things on your own there.
You're talking a lot about people being pleasant to work with and building relationships. And like, I know you, Dave, you're a relationship guy. We're
Yeah.
relationship people. That's part of the reason why we worked so well together. But how how does that look for somebody who maybe doesn't have a relationship built yet? I know I'm going off of script here, but I just think digging into that a little bit is important because the people who are listening to our show, they don't know how to build those relationships yet, but they also don't understand the business side of it. And it's not just all being pleasant. Sometimes those relationships are built off of delivering things well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most important part is to like establish a good first connection. If you're someone new in the motorsports world and you're looking to work with partners and you have some sort of backing or you have something to offer, make that known. Don't be pushy about it. And also, this one thing specifically, if you send out a blanket email, please make sure that you change the name of the company that you're going to send it to because that happens to me frequently.
Oh, no.
People will reach out and they'll be like, "Hey, you don't know," and I'm like, "That's not even our company, but I appreciate you reaching out." But like that's stuff that like, unfortunately, when I see stuff like that, it's like an automatic no for me
Mhm.
because I'm like, if you need to put like the effort in to like make sure that you're double checking this before you even send it out. But I also think a lot of it is like just ask, right? It's really like you have to look at yourself to see what you're willing to do because like from a partner side it's not work like arguably you guys work harder than we probably do to make sure that the deliverables that are being asked for are being met. If you see an opportunity where you think you add value, I think there's absolutely no harm in just kind of asking away, right? Establishing a first connection, having that conversation, seeing what the vibe is, right? Because like that does matter. I'm pretty easygoing. I think someone will probably add value in some aspect regardless of what it is, right? I can always kind of pick and pull like, okay, well, you're good at this thing or you do this or this or this. Okay, I see value in that. Like we can probably do something together, if you can leverage this thing that you're good at to help, our business grow. And I think a lot of people just have to stop being scared to ask about it, but don't be upset when you get turned down
Mhm.
because this is a massive industry. Set yourself apart from every other Joe Schmo. And it's so hard to do nowadays with social media and everything else. It's like everyone that's a racer is an influencer, is a partner, is a brand ambassador, is a what have you, right? And so having a previous following is also helpful if you really want to get things started like quickly, but building yourself from the ground up in this aspect, like let's say you're young and you're new and you're coming into some sort of motorsports, right? It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time for you to establish your own connections with people, to establish brands that you're going to want to work with because realistically, you're going to want to work with specific brands. If you're a fan of a certain brand, let's say like Fox suspension or something like that, right? If you're racing off road and you want to work with them, you're probably going to reach out to them at some point. But don't be surprised if they come back and they're like, "Hey, listen, you know, we see what you're doing here. We have XYZ higher priorities than this. Let's talk about it and see what we can come up with from a, smaller partner perspective."
Mhm.
And so it does vary. It varies drastically.
I love that because 'cause you're talking about taking a no and turning it into a not yet, and I think that that's something
Yeah.
a lot of people don't do.
Well, right. And I think a lot of people get discouraged too. Like it is hard. Like if you're sending out email requests to this, and you're trying to sponsor a program, right? That's hard. It's hard to do, especially if you're footing the bill for everything yourself already. And so like that's kind of where it comes in. Like a good perspective here is like, Blaster sponsors the team PRMX, right? So it's the motocross team. And, it's 5 or 6 guys, right? The team does fairly well. They don't do, they're not top 3, top 10 every race, but the team does well and they work with some of the new products that we have. And so when it comes to that, your winnings or how many trophies you have or what championships you've done or XYZ, sometimes that doesn't matter because there's there's different ways to kind of approach as a business what we're looking for. I may not care that you're, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 10th place, but what I do care is that, hey, you talk about your products really well. And, you are a brand ambassador and you go out of your way to do XYZ. A lot of it is just effort. And I've had this happen before is people will send me sponsorship decks or hey sponsor me or stuff like that, and they'll give me like a whole list of these things to quantify why they're valuable, and that's great. But if you can only quantify yourself based off the numbers that you're receiving from, let's say, social or like interactions, stuff like that, okay, but who are you as a person? Like what is your end goal? What are the goals that you want to have for yourself? Where do you want to like go into? What's your 5-year plan? So uh I think I think a lot of these earlier partnerships that come in, it's a lot of opportunity for brand building. And so, like Megan said, Megan and Randy and their team have been with Gunk and Blaster for so long. Megan's a good example of explaining kind of how the increase happens over the years when you establish a partnership with a brand early on, right? Long term
Mhm.
partner. It's a little bit different for everybody, but if you're starting out, drive hard, make sure that you're selling yourself in a positive manner, but don't overwork yourself because that's exhausting and no one likes to do that. And then it just makes everything bad.
To extend more on topic of, like, decks and, like, getting cold emails and cold calling and all that, because I feel like racers just do the same thing or, like, they just make the same type of deck. What I've seen from racers and decks is that they just make it all about them and, like, "Here's my biography, here's my accomplishments, here's my schedule," and then it's like, "This is how much it's gonna cost to sponsor me." And just my experience on the brand side and a little bit of the management side is that from companies, they want it to be like, "Okay, well, this is how I can help you," or like, "These are like the markets that we can do," or "This is the audience demographics," and like they're interested in buying these types of products in the next 6 to 12 months. So is there anything else that like you've seen from a deck that has really made it stand out other than like I love that you had mentioned to do include like a 5-year plan. But yeah, is there anything else that like really stands out or is there anything that's kind of a non-traditional deliverable that has helped seal the deal?
I think a lot of this like goes back to effort. And it can be like small things for me, right? I'm not super picky about this, but I do see it. Having a graphic design background is a hindrance in itself because when people send me bad decks that are visually bad, then I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I have to push myself back and I have to be like, listen, read the deck for the information that it's in, not the way that it's presented, because not everybody has that skill set. So I think a lot of it has to do with like, I've had people that have sent me decks that are like, okay, here's what I want to do, year one. Okay, year two, these are my thoughts for, if we partner, this is what I'd like to do with the brand. Year three, when people lay out plans like that, that kind of just say like, okay, here's my personal plans within this motorsport or, whatever, if it's YouTube, et cetera. Like, okay, having somebody that actually lays out their growth pattern or like what they'd like to achieve and then say, hey, I want to work with you guys. I want to help you guys grow your business, but I also want to achieve these goals. How can we work together to actually do both of these things to establish a long term partnership? And I think a lot of it just comes back to effort. That could be very small things. Personally, for me, it's like if one of our partners shoots me a text like, hey, I just wanted to check in on this thing. Okay. I may not respond right away. Right. But I appreciate that they're checking in outside of work hours to be like, hey, I had this thought. Or, hey, I did this. Or hey, I have a question about this. I think really for me, it's the ability to actually have a relationship that's not just business oriented, or maybe it is a business oriented relationship, but it doesn't feel like a business relationship,
Mhm.
right? You know, I'm different than a lot of people. Some people just want it cut and dry. This is what I expect of you. Here's your money. Here's your deliverables. Give me this. You're good. Whatever. I won't talk to you until it's next year when we have to review your contract. I'm not like that. I'm like, hey, we have a new thing coming out. Do you want to try it or check it out or make some videos on it or, whatever have you? And a lot of people won't do that. And I like to leave the option open for various avenues of marketing and brand exposure because every partner is different and everyone has something different to offer. And as a business, you kind of have to leverage that and you have to trust that those people know what they're doing. And from our like brand partnership specifically, like with a lot of our YouTube people, our influencers and stuff, it works like that. I'm not a content creator, right? I'm a content consumer, right? I don't really make a lot of content for myself because it's just it's not my jam. You know, every once in a while I'll throw a post up here and there. But, you know, when you have someone reaching out that's like, hey, I want to try this thing. This is not something we've done traditionally, or I've seen you guys do traditionally. I'm usually like, yeah, all right, try it. If you don't try it, then you're missing out. But if you try it and it works, then that's great. If you try it and it fails, okay, how can we try this again in a different manner to kind of make sure it doesn't fail? Or okay, this is a good example. We got, XYZ from this. How can we adjust it to make sure that next time we do something like this, something that's out of the norm, how can this become more impactful than what we did the first time?
I like that. I like the way that you're talking about like different kinds of deliverables too. Like, the race car itself and the at the track activations and presence and that whole story is, kind of one thing. But then social media is an entirely different animal. How important when you're making decisions on where you're putting your marketing budget, how important is that social media aspect? And how do you make those decisions based on social media versus kind of the other stuff?
Unfortunately, social media plays a massive part in this type of industry nowadays. I mean, realistically, it's not just our industry, it's the entire world, right? Social media is a marketing platform as opposed to what it was 10, 15 years ago. It is now social media is used for marketing and it has moved away from your traditional like here's a picture of my dog or stuff like that to like hey, here's how I grew my brand from this and this. Here's how I'm building 3 cars at once or so it is important in some aspect, but I guess that generally depends what space you're in. If you're racing, obviously that's helpful. I don't think it's an all ending determining factor, but I do think having that support is important because it kind of helps you quantify your value. And I hate to say
Mhm.
that because I really don't necessarily like social media that much from that perspective because it really is like you have to sell your product to people. And It's fine for some. I don't know. It's just not my jam. I think it's important. But if you send me a deck and you're like, hey, I'm willing to do XYZ, I don't have a massive social following, but hey, I'm willing to promote your brand at like events or go to these places that you need me to go to help promote it or stuff like that. That adds other value.
Mhm.
But if they were just like, "Hey, I'm gonna put your logo on my car and do a social media post," like, that's not very much value.
I have lots of opinions about just slapping logos on
We
shit.
wanna hear it. We
Yeah,
wanna hear
tell
all of
us.
it.
I
Give us the inside scoop.
I do not personally like you can slam a logo everywhere. You can spend so much money as a company or whatever to put your logo wherever you want it to be. Okay. Without prior brand recognition, okay, it's not going to do you any good. So if you have an unknown brand and you're not putting all of your marketing dollars behind just doing that one thing and then supplementing that with other marketing ads or promotions or sponsored paid, paid search, whatever. No, I don't like it. I think it's silly. Why should I spend my money as a company to put my logo on the side of your vehicle when I could probably go spend, the same amount of money and use those marketing dollars for paid ads, right? So like let's say you're asking for 20 grand to put a logo on the side of your car. That's great. Okay, it gets me that exposure within the space that you're in. But if I spend $20,000 on paid search or paid ads, I'm hitting a 10, 20x, consumer level at that point. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like having the other value besides or just put your logo on stuff is important because people don't realize that companies can spend their money elsewhere, and if they just want their logo on things they could pay to do that. There's billboards, there's paid ads, right? There's dealership signage you can use and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, yes, the logo's cool, tied into the content, sure, maybe, but it's more than that. And I'll use this as a good example. Like, did you guys watch the new Gymkhana?
I haven't
No.
yet. I'm
Okay,
a
so
terrible automotive consumer apparently, but it just
that's all right.
released, like, while we were at PRI, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
So
Seen it.
like obviously that's massive, right? Hoonigan, it's Travis Pastrana, right? So all those they all have prior brand recognition. Now, what I did notice with some of the other brands that were included, I like Heatwave. So if you put Heatwave into perspective, and I'll use them as a good example, 10 years ago, no one no one in this industry really knew who or what Heatwave was or if it was even around. I don't even know if it was around 10 years ago, to be honest with you. But what I can tell you from being someone that's been involved with this space is that I've seen an increase in their marketing as someone who is a consumer of their marketing, who actually buys their products, right? I have watched their marketing go from paid ads on social media to now they're partnering with Hoonigan and doing stuff with Gymkhana and getting all of that brand exposure and kind of working with them. And Heatwave has kind of really established their way into that space. And like that's where they're gonna live now because
Mhm.
that's where they're gonna sell product. And so, it's kind of like just a naturally seeing the growth of something like that go from very little to large. It's important that you're able to do that as someone at a lower level. Like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you land a big brand deal, whatever you would consider as a big brand for you or, whoever you are, leverage that. Leverage them and leverage their partners. Hey, I need a tire sponsor. Okay, cool. Is there anyone that you know within this space that's, applicable to like what I'm doing? I think it's all about just having the conversation and just putting yourself out there because social media is not going to do all of it for you. Your racing isn't necessarily going to do all of it for you. It's kind of like a whole package. And like I
Mhm.
said, I would take social media out of it completely because whatever. But again,
I love the Heatwave example. I will say their marketing worked on me because they pop up on my Facebook, like recommended ads all the time, along with basically every other. I don't want to say like cheap sunglasses, but like not Oakley, not Ray-Ban, right? Like that kind of mid-tier sunglass,
yeah,
right? They always pop up. And I didn't know who Heatwave was until I saw their name on the side of the Eisenhower trophy truck and then on the side of their Beetle while I was racing at Crandon. And yeah, you best believe that now we bought heat waves because
Yeah.
there they are. They're in
Yeah.
more than one place. They're not just popping up on my social media feed.
Yeah. And like, I do like that as an example because it's not, I wouldn't consider them a legacy brand, right? At least from
Right.
my personal perspective, I haven't consumed a lot of their marketing in the last 10 years. It's only been in like the last 2 years that I've really seen a lot of it. Like I said, I have bought heat waves. I have heat wave goggles and glasses and all kinds of stuff in my house that I use on a daily basis. And it's kind of like, you know, going back to just slapping the logo on stuff. It works eventually. It's not going to work right away, but
Mm-mm.
it will work eventually, depending if you have the brand support and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we ran into when I was at Nexen. It was they were very heavy on like, "Oh, let's just slap a logo on this." And I was always very much not that. And I was like, "We have to look at this from a bigger picture because you're paying a bunch of money to just put your logo somewhere and nobody knows what we're selling."
Yes.
So,
Yes, like on my sweater, right? Today I've got my
right, exactly. Well, that's
my
on Chris's truck. So it like doesn't count because you're
it's
promoting Chris's truck.
you can't see it, but there's also a Nexen Tire logo on Santa's sleigh.
Okay, okay.
Santa's also
So now you
promoting.
sponsor Santa. Well, I guess not you. Next to
Not Dave, yeah.
Yeah, next, not me.
Okay, so let's keep going. One thing that I think you kind of touched on with like people coming into motorsports and sponsorship kind of fresh. We've got a lot of people that are listening that are really just starting with their sponsorship searches and they dream of just getting an email response, right? Reaching out and actually hearing back from a company. So, let's say that a racer has your contact info, they got your email from somebody and they're sending you an email for the first time. You don't know them. They're cold calling you. They've just got that one chance to make an impression. What is something, an absolute must have that they would have in that email that would get a response from you?
So I'm actually pretty good about this. I try to respond to most people just because like you're right. A lot of people will send stuff out and they won't get any responses. And that sucks as like someone that's younger that's trying to come into a space. If you send me a 2 sentence email that says, "Hey, I'm looking to be sponsored." Okay, I'm probably not going to respond at all and or quickly in any manner. But if you put in effort and you're like, "Hey, this is new. I'm new in this space. Here's a little bit about me. Here's my achievements." And then you kind of go into that and you're like, "Okay, well, they put a little bit of effort in. Let me probe this to see if it's something that we can work with." Because we had different sponsorship levels at Nexen, right? Like sometimes we'll just sponsor if you want tires, if you're racing in, whatever class you're in or what and you're like, "Hey, I really just need a tire sponsor. Here's what I'm willing to do." Okay. That's different than monetary value, right? Product
Right.
sponsorship usually is a lot easier for most companies because you have product margin. That's something that most people don't know, but there is an opportunity for a lot of margin plays there. And a lot of companies will actually work based off of, just product sponsorship and not monetary. And Nexon was kind of like that, in some aspects. They had focus in other areas that were paid because it was something that they cared a little bit more about. But I think just making sure that you have your story straight, having like a general idea, send the email. If you don't get a response, okay, send the email to someone else. Someone is eventually going to respond to you. And usually what I do get a lot of is I'll get a lot of like, 2 paragraph, 3 paragraph, "Hey, here's my whole story." And I'll go, "Okay, I appreciate you sending this over. Can you send over some, media, some images? If you have social media or use it to help promote this, send over some information so I can take a look at that." Because for me, it's like I want to see how you're representing yourself on social media as well, right?
Mhm.
Because that's important. Whatever your opinions are about anything aside, it's very important if you're going to work with partners that you present yourself on social media. If you're using that as an avenue to help grow yourself and grow your future within whatever sponsorship or, whatever have you, it's very important to represent yourself in a positive manner.
Mhm.
Now, there's some larger people that can get away with like doing some, dicey things. Maybe they have a personality behind them that kind of is backed by their other sponsors, right? Like it's part of their persona, their likeness, or it's the reason why they like them. But I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that like put the effort in, write the email. You're probably going to get a lot of no responses, but there's people like me that I'm like, okay, I can't give you any money right now, or hey, let's establish something for product because I can offer you product if you'd like. And it's never like a forceful thing. It's always like a listen, I can't offer you any monetary support, but I'm willing to work with you on product to see if we can establish a long-term partnership or to see if this is something that'll be useful to us in our future here, whether
Mhm.
it's with you or with someone else or whoever. So it's kind of like you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail a bunch. You're gonna send a bunch of emails. You're gonna hate typing emails. You're gonna hate doing all of it, and it's gonna suck. But eventually, it's gonna suck less, and eventually, you'll get some responses. Like you will eventually, and they may be good, they may be bad, but make sure that you have a reason to kind of back up what you're trying to pitch to them, you know, whether it's with numbers or your personality or the type of content you make. Because I've noticed that like I consume content in a very specific way. I like a specific type of content, right? And so if you're creating that type of content and I like it, and it's something that I see that I view and I'm like, okay, this is funny, or this is a good brand messaging in it, but it's not forced and it's not, you know, hi, well, today's sponsored ad is by I hate that. No, I don't
These
want to do that. It's not organic. So I would use Brett Horn as an example. Brett is someone that we work with. I just let Brett do what Brett does. And I don't think there's ever been a time where he sent me some content and I've been like, "No, that's horrible." I'm like, "Okay, it's a little dicier than what we normally do, but it's your target audience and you know your audience better than I do, so run with it and see how it performs." So it's kind of like it's a lot of it's trial and error, and some stuff's gonna work, some stuff's not. So I don't know. Take your skills and abilities and stuff that you like as someone coming into this, and utilize those skills and abilities, whether it is content creation or some other skill set that you may have. Leverage yourself to help grow yourself with other people and other partners. Don't try to fit into any specific box because you're not going to, right? Everybody's different. That's just kind of how it works.
Yeah, well, I wanted to touch on how you had mentioned the tiers that you had at Nexen because one thing that I've noticed with racers is that they may get a product sponsor or maybe just a discount, but they blow it up to make it look like they got a huge title sponsor and funding. They'll do a whole wrap and everything. So do you see that as like just, "Hey, like, thanks for the extra exposure," or do you see it as maybe a red flag if someone kind of blows it up more than what it actually should be?
Well, from a business perspective, if you're giving me more for less, I'm never going to see it as a negative thing. And like that's not me speaking personally. That's me speaking from a
Yeah.
business mindset.
But, okay, so do you see it as like, "Hey, we only have to give them a set of tires or a box of brake clean, and they're gonna do all this other stuff, so we don't need to do more with them because they're already doing it."
No, because what generally happens with that is it can be a red flag in some instances, right? Let's say you establish contract deliverables with a team or a driver or whoever, and you settle on a dollar amount and product amount and what have you, and they go back and they're doing above and beyond and everything else. Okay, well, we're not obligated to pay you for these extra things that you're doing. We appreciate it from a brand perspective and someone, coming from me personally, like, hey, I see this as a lot of effort. Maybe if you continue to do this, or if this is something you want to continue to do and you're not just doing it for, whatever reason, what Megan said, like with the overly promoting something to make it look like it is something it's not, I think it could go two ways. It can be like, okay, cool. This was a short 1 year contract. Hey, we're not doing this anymore. Okay. And then all your wasted effort goes out the door.
Mhm.
Or, you know, oh, you did all this stuff. Hey, we have enough budget to like really actually do this next year. Right. So it can go both ways. I would say people need to be realistic with what they're selling to a sponsor. Right. But they also need to not oversell. Tell them what you're willing to actually do, but don't tell them you're going to do all these things and then not deliver on those things, whether it's contracted or not. And obviously life happens and like everybody gets that. So like it's I'm lenient when it comes to stuff like that because I just am. But some people won't be.
I don't know, Megan. I think you kind of picked up on exactly the same thing that I was thinking about because honestly, even in our race program, Chris and I were just talking about this the other day. Racers will sign up for a discount program and they'll like make these big announcements. I've seen a bunch of them right now because it's that time of the year when people are, getting those accepted notifications. But we're seeing all of these and we're like, I know that person's just getting a discount, but they're making it seem like they got this huge sponsorship. But the issue is like they'll make this big announcement. They might have this like really massive sticker on their car, but you never hear about that product again from them until the next year when they re sign with them, or it just falls off completely. But we were talking about the fact that, sometimes there is that opportunity to grow from free product or discounted product into a paid partnership overall. But, I think Dave, you really hit on like this relationship that kind of builds and it's this slow burn from the ground up and really understanding your partner's goals and them understanding your goals. You can have conversations years in advance. Like I know that like our contract with Nexen, we're guaranteed we're going through 2026, but we're a year out from the expiration of our contract. We're having conversations right now about what does it look like after that. Let's get that figured out now because we can build that ramp up before we're actually getting paid for it, right? And I think the same thing goes from working from the ground up with a partnership that's based on free product. If you're getting free product, but you haven't talked to them about what does the future look like and is there opportunity for growth, and you've got all of this above and beyond, and then they're just going to say, sorry, you're not in the budget next year, like that becomes a problem. But if you are talking about, what does 2027 look like? If I, do this in 2026 and prove to you that like there's opportunity here, can we maybe look at 2027 as a paid year? And if you're not having those conversations and you're still going above and beyond, I think that's where the problem is.
Yeah, like I said, it's like don't oversell yourself or like don't I don't want to say it's wasted effort because it could be or it could not be. It really depends on the situation. But like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, for companies like, Nexen and Blaster and Gunk and stuff like that, budgets will just change, right? Things change. Management changes, budget changes, stuff like that happens. So like you can have a perfect relationship and a long-term standing relationship with a team or a driver or something like that. But if the business doesn't see value in that, and like I hate to say it, marketing is the first thing to go.
Mhm.
Like marketing spend, marketing dollars, budget, all that stuff gets reallocated to wherever the low end of it is. And
Yeah.
so like it does suck. It sucks a little bit, but at the same point, if you can really sell yourself and be a good partner and show that you'll be a good long-term partner that has like a good standing relationship with and that has product knowledge and et cetera, that's willing to maybe go above and beyond every once in a while, but it's not necessarily something that's expected. I think you're in a better position than someone that's just, slapping a logo on their stuff and posting about it once on the internet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to wrap up here, I know you've given us a lot of great advice, but if there is just one other piece of advice that you could give to grassroots racers who are just starting out, what would that be?
If you're a low level grassroots person trying to like gather some sponsorships, go to your local businesses. Start there. Go to your car dealership. Go to, Joe's Landscaping or stuff like that. Because, I think people are always like gotta reach for the highest thing possible all the time. Like, oh, I want this XYZ biggest brand to sponsor me. Okay, but if you're low level and you're like, okay, hey, Mama Joe's Pizza, will you give me $500 and I'll help promote your product and hand out coupons at like races and stuff like that. Like, don't be afraid to start small because, it's going to open up avenues for you in the long term that's going to help you grow. But people that reach for the stars immediately, I'm sure some people have success. I haven't seen a lot of it.
Mhm.
I think starting at a low level and like being realistic with yourself off the rip, what you're able to deliver will help you drastically. And working with some smaller local businesses, especially like I said, if you're starting out low level, like you're just getting into something, it doesn't hurt to ask. Everything that you don't ask, you won't receive. But
Mhm.
you can ask and be told no, or ask and you can be told yes. So try not to reach for the stars immediately. Focus on some smaller stuff and maybe try to work with brands that you personally like, right?
Yeah. I love that because Dave, you talked about things aren't always going to work out well. You're going to win some and you're going to learn on some. And would you rather fail and learn with a $500 local cafe, or would you rather fail and learn with a national brand like Blaster?
Right. So it's kind of like, you have, I don't want to say it's less to lose, but it is, but
Mhm.
it's also more to gain. So,
Great advice. All right. So we will wrap up. Dave, you've been an amazing guest. I sincerely appreciate that you've allowed Megan and I to pick your brain and share that with the world. So thank you so much for coming on.
yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Glad I could give some sort of insight here. I'm curious to see what other people have to say. You know.
Yeah, we've got a couple of other people lined up. You'll have to subscribe to get
Yes.
I will.
notifications.
I'll subscribe. I have to.
Well, Megan, Dave, thank you guys so much. This is always a pleasure. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you get notifications. We are on bi weekly every other Thursday. So you will hear from us again soon. And until then, we love you. Bye.
Buddy. Thank you.